Commander Avenue presents the complete checkmate patterns. Discover 36 important checkmate patterns, each explained with a practical example. Let's level up your tactical skills next at your very doorstep, by mastering the checkmating patterns. Why spotting checkmate patterns is important? If you notice all kinds of decoys, X-rays, and all other fancy tactical motifs, but you're not very good with mating patterns, you'll fail to find many chess tactics. And the same way, you might start a brilliant attack, but fail to finish it, if your mating patterns knowledge is not very good. This is also useful for everyday chess even if you're a seasoned, intermediate player, beginner or a newcomer. This is where having a sharp eye for checkmate patterns helps. As you get better at noticing such patterns, you'll also improve your tactical and attacking skills. At the end of this video, we'll come back to this beautiful puzzle in the mind-blowing move. But first, I'll introduce you to 36 important mating patterns, each with one practical example. Some of the patterns are common but are somehow not covered in most of the other articles, books, or learning resources. It is very important to watch this video up to the end. After this, I'll also share how you can further train and improve the skill of noticing these patterns and answer some of your common questions. Are you ready? Let's get right to it. Here's the top 36 checkmate patterns. Number 1. Anastasia's Mate. The first checkmate pattern in the list illustrates Anastasia's mate. Rook h3 checkmate the black king against the side of the board. Note how white's knight is perfectly placed to cover the escape squares. Number 2. Anderson's Mate is a checkmate pattern that features a rook supported by a pawn as it checkmates the opposing king along the 8th rank from the corner. The pawn is then also defended by another piece or pawn. The pattern is named after Adolf Anderssen, a German chess master from the 19th century. Rook h8 checkmate white concludes the game with the Anderson mate. A particular feature of this position is that white's pawn is defended by his king. Number 3. Arabian Mate is a checkmate pattern that features the unique abilities of a knight, horse, with the help of a rook. Rook h7 checkmate. Note how the white knight defends the rook on h7 and at the same time covers the escape square, g8. This demonstration of the knight's unique abilities is the main feature of the Arabian Mate. Number 4. Back rank Mate. It happens when a king is trapped behind its own pawn shield and gets mated by a rook or queen. White plays rook d8 checkmate. The black king is trapped on the back rank, behind his own pawn shield, hence the name, back rank mate. This proves that your own pieces can sometimes work against you. Number 5. Balestra Mate is a checkmate pattern that demonstrates optimal coordination between a queen and bishop. Bishop c6 checkmate shows how the white bishop and queen coordinate perfectly to checkmate the black king on the side of the board. Interesting note on the Balestra Mate: it appears that the name, Balestra Mate, performed by a queen and bishop, was first used as a tag on chess tempo in order to distinguish it from Boden's Mate, which involves two bishops. An important observation here is that the case of Balestra Mate, the bishop must be the checking piece if the queen has the task to block all escape squares, without the help of the opponent's own pieces. Number 6. Blackburn's Mate. It involves two bishops and a knight against a castled king. Bishop h7 checkmate demonstrates the typical coordination between two bishops and a knight that resembles Blackburn's Mate. The pattern is named after Joseph Henry Blackburn, a British chess player who once demonstrated this checkmate in one of his games. Number 7. Blind Swine Mate. It demonstrates the power of two connected rooks on the 7th rank. Rook dg7 checkmate illustrates the checkmate pattern. The two white rooks on the 7th rank coordinate to trap the castled king, with the help of the obstructing black rook on f8. It's often impossible to defend against this checkmate pattern, which is why you should be very aware of the danger presented by two connected rooks on the 7th rank. According to an article on chessgod.com, this checkmate pattern got its name from David Janowski, a Polish grandmaster who referred to a pair of rooks on the 7th rank that could not find a mate as blind swine. Number 8. Boden's Mate. It demonstrates the power of two bishops on open diagonals. Bishop a6 shows how the two white bishops work together to deliver checkmate. They require the help of black's rook and pawn. They occupy the escape squares. This checkmate pattern is named after Samuel Boden, an English chess master from the 19th century. He wasn't the first player to use it, but he used it in a game that became well-known: Schulder Boden, London 1853. Number 9. Corner Mate. As the name suggests, is a checkmate pattern against an enemy king that is trapped in a corner. The actual checkmate is often executed by a knight. Knight f7 demonstrates the checkmate pattern known as the corner mate. Note how the white rook on g1, with the help of the black pawn on h7, traps the black king in the corner. Number 10. Corridor mate is reached when the enemy king can't escape from check because it's trapped along a rank, file or diagonal corridor. Queen c4 is checkmate because black king is trapped on the c-file corridor. The back rank mate that we studied earlier is also a type of corridor mate. Number 11. Diagonal corridor mate bishop e4 demonstrates how a king could also be trapped and mated on a diagonal corridor. Number 12. Cozio's mate, dovetail mate. Was originally a study published by Carlos Cozio, an Italian chess player from the 18th century. Cozio's mate is also known as the dovetail mate since the arrangement of the pieces visually resemble a dove's tail. Number 13. Damiano's mate is a checkmate pattern where a queen and a pawn, or queen and a bishop, coordinate their efforts against a castled king. It can only work if the pawn shield in front of the enemy king has been compromised. Queen h7 demonstrates the basic idea in Damiano's checkmate. Black's rook obstructs f8. Another important aspect of this mate is that the white pawn covers the escape square, f7. The same could be accomplished if white had a bishop on g6, instead of a pawn. Interesting note on Damiano's mate user King Bishop on chess.com reveals that this checkmate idea was first published by Pedro Damiano, a Portuguese chess player, in 1512. Furthermore, the well-known advice, if you see a good move, try to find a better one, is often attributed to Lasker and other modern chess writers, but according to Wikipedia, this advice is found in Damiano's book written more than 500 years ago. Number 14. David and Goliath mate is characterized by the fact that a humble pawn checkmates the opponent's king. h4 proves it is quite possible for a pawn to deliver checkmate, with the help of other pieces and/or pawns though. Although it appears unusual to deliver checkmate with a pawn, it is quite common in actual games. Number 15. Epaulette mate. It resembles the visual appearance of an ornamental shoulder piece sometimes worn by elite military personnel. White plays queen e6. The black rooks decorate the king's shoulders. Number 16. Fool's mate, also known as the two-move checkmate, is the quickest possible checkmate pattern in chess. The fool's mate is reached after the moves f3, or f4, e5, g4 is blunder, queen h4 checkmate. The white king can't move to a safe square and he can't block the check either. It is unusual for white to move the f-pawn and g-pawn on their first two moves, but it is still a fairly common occurrence among beginners. Number 17. Greco's mate occurs when the enemy king is trapped in a corner with the help of a bishop. It is a great example of how a rook and bishop can coordinate to deliver checkmate. Rook h1 demonstrates Greco's mate. The white bishop covers the escape square, g8, whilst g7 is occupied by one of black's own pawns. The white rook delivers the checkmate along the open h-file. Number 18. H-file mate. A fairly common attacking method in chess is to destroy the pawn shield in front of an enemy king, often with a sacrifice. Various other checkmate patterns can become possible as a result of the open h-file. Rook h8. The open h-file allows white to execute Anderson's mate. Number 19. Hookmate. The hookmate is a very useful and instructive checkmate pattern that demonstrates optimal coordination between a rook and knight. The pattern is named after its visual appearance that resemble a hook. Rook h8 demonstrates the hookmate. Note the optimal coordination between the rook and knight. The knight must be supported though, in this case by the pawn on f5, else the black king could simply capture the knight. Number 20. Kill box mate. Occurs when a queen and rook work together to checkmate the enemy king in a box. Rook d8 is a simple demonstration of the kill box mate. Note how the queen defends the rook whilst also containing the black king in a box. Number 21. Lawnmower mate is an easy checkmate typically performed by a queen and rook, or just two rooks. The two pieces work together to push the enemy king to the side of the board. Since it is a very common checkmate pattern, it is one of the first checkmate methods that a beginner should learn. Rook a8. The lawnmower mate is named after the alternating advance of the two rooks that push the enemy king all the way to the edge of the board. It is because of this rolling action that the pattern is sometimes referred to as the rook roller's mate. Number 22. L'Aigle's mate is named after the French chess player, Sire de l'Aigle, 1702 to 1792. He commonly used the pattern in his games. It's important to note that the position below was reached after white played nxe5, allowing the black bishop to capture white's queen on d1. Bishop takes f7 is not checkmate yet, but it will be mate after king e7, knight d5. Number 23. Lolly's mate is a common checkmate pattern performed by the cooperation between a queen and pawn, typically against a castled king. White plays queen g7. The pawn defends the queen. This pattern is fairly common. Once the queen arrives on h6, it is often impossible to defend against the mate threat. This pattern is named after Giambattista Lolli, an Italian chess player from the 18th century. Number 24. Max Lang's mate demonstrates great coordination between a queen and bishop. Queen g8 demonstrates the Max Lang mate. Note how white's bishop covers g6, whilst black's own pawn obstructs the h6 square. This checkmate is named after a German chess player from late 19th century, Max Lang. Number 25. Mate's mate occurs when a rook is placed right next to the enemy king whilst the rook is supported by a distant bishop. The king is further obstructed by his own pieces. Rook d8 demonstrates the checkmate pattern. The rook is supported by a distant bishop whilst the enemy king is also obstructed by his own pawns. Mate's mate is very similar to the opera mate. The difference is very subtle. Mate's mate versus the opera mate. Notice the difference in the placement and role of the bishop. In the case of the opera mate, the bishop plays an even more important role by covering the square in front of the enemy king. Number 26. Morphy's mate is named after the legendary American chess player, Paul Morphy. The checkmate is executed by a bishop and rook. This is a theoretical position that illustrates the concept of Morphy's mate. The black king is trapped in the corner behind its own pawn. The king is also cut off by the white rook. White's bishop delivers the checkmate. From this discussion on a chess.com forum, you will notice that there is a fair amount of confusion about Morphy's mate. There are mainly two reasons for this confusion. The checkmate never actually happened in the game it was named after, and Paul Morphy was better known for other checkmate patterns, such as the opera mate, which coincidentally is also a rook and bishop checkmate pattern. Number 27. Opera mate is a checkmate pattern that was demonstrated by Paul Morphy while watching opera with the Duke of Brunswick and Count Isoard, in Paris, 1858. Rook d8 is the move that earned the opera mate its name. Paul Morphy played this game whilst watching an opera show. Number 28. Pillsbury's mate occurs when a bishop controls the corner square next to a castled king, whilst a rook delivers the mate. For this to happen, the pawn shield in front of the king must be compromised and black's rook must still be next to the king. Rook g1 demonstrates Pillsbury's mate. The main feature of this pattern is the role of white's bishop that covers the escape square, h8. Number 29. Railroad mate is a checkmate method that combines the features of the triangle mate and the kill box mate. Together, it resembles an unstoppable train moving along a rail. Rook h7 check king g8, queen f7 checkmate is the railroad mate. This interesting checkmate method demonstrates powerful coordination between a queen and rook. Number 30. Reti's mate is named after a famous game between two chess legends, Richard Reti and Savioli Tartakower. The pattern is based on the X-ray ability of a bishop, or queen. Bishop d8. A distinct feature of this checkmate pattern is that the bishop also covers b6 through its X-ray ability. This checkmate is further made possible by the fact that black's own pawns and pieces further obstruct their king. Number 31. Scholar's mate, also known as the four-move checkmate, is a very common checkmate pattern among beginners. Queen takes f7 as checkmate because the black king can't move to a safe square. At the same time, the white queen is supported by the bishop on c4. Most of the time, scholar's mate is reached by the moves e4 e5, queen h5 knight c6, bishop c4 knight f6 as a blunder, queen takes f7 checkmate. Number 32. Smothered mate is only possible if the enemy king is completely surrounded by his own pieces. This pattern also features the unique jumping ability of the knight. Knight f7. This simplified position demonstrates smothered mate. Note how the black king is completely surrounded by his own pieces. How smothered mate is typically executed. It's useful to see an example of how smothered mate is usually achieved. Knight h6 check kh8, queen g8 check rook takes g8, knight f7 checkmate demonstrates how smothered mate is usually achieved. Even though it's very unique, The smothered mate is a fairly common checkmate pattern. If you play chess often, there is a very real chance that you will someday get the opportunity to use this checkmate on your very surprised opponent, or see the danger before it happens to you. Number 33. Suffocation mate is a checkmate pattern with a bishop and knight. The knight checks the king and the bishop suffocates him, with the help of a few enemy pieces that further obstruct the king. Knight e7 checkmate demonstrates the suffocation mate. The king is mostly obstructed by his own pieces and the white bishop covers the open squares from a distance. Number 34. Swallow's tail mate, Guridon mate, visually resembles the appearance of a swallow's tail. It's also known as Guridon's checkmate and it's similar to the epaulette mate. Queen g5 checkmate. The swallow's tail mate is an example of a checkmate pattern that is named after its visual appearance. The two black pawns behind the king, which also prevents the king from escaping, visually resemble a swallow's tail. The white king, or another piece that supports the queen, can be seen as the swallow's head. The dovetail mate, also known as Cozio's mate, is another checkmate pattern named after the visual appearance of a bird's tail. Number 35. Triangle mate, also known as the fishtail mate, resembles the visual appearance of a triangle, or a fishtail for that matter. The checkmate also demonstrates good coordination between a queen and rook. Queen f5 is a simple demonstration of the triangle mate. Note how the white queen, white rook and black pawn on g7 resemble a triangle around the black king. And lastly, number 36. Vukovic mate is named after the international master, Vladimir Vukovic, who showed this checkmate pattern in his book, The Art of Attack in Chess. The pattern demonstrates powerful coordination between the rook and knight, with the help of a supporting piece. Rook f7 is the Vukovic mate. Note the important role of the knight, covering the escape squares e8 and g8, the white pawn on e6 supports the rook, but this task could also be accomplished by any other piece that would defend the rook. Learn the names of famous checkmate moves. It is a good idea to learn and memorize the names of all the essential checkmate patterns. Why? Because knowing the name of a checkmate pattern helps embed in your mind what the particular pattern looks like. This may in turn help you identify possible opportunities in your games that you otherwise may have overlooked. In a conclusion of checkmate patterns, it is a good idea to learn and memorize the names of all the essential checkmate patterns. Why? Because knowing the name of a checkmate pattern can help you remember it better. It is advantage that it should be familiarized all these things to faster develop your playing style and to increase your level of thinking and tactical skills. I'll give you an example of actual game position played by grandmasters, using the checkmate patterns and name it in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your friends, so we can making them. For more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to click on the notification bell. Also, be sure to check out our other videos as well. Thanks for watching.